Alfano. He is a clinical psychologist and also a person that works in the theology of spirituality. I had a great conversation with him about a month ago. And honestly, the thing that I kept thinking about when I was walking my dogs was, am I walking the dog is it for them or is it for me? And I had to make sure that they kept smelling everything. And we'll get into that conversation a little bit. How you doing?
I'm very well, thanks. Good to meet you, Will.
Good to meet you too. I really was actually like thinking about when you went on a hike with your boys, then you were describing it, and well, I want to show this for the kids, and then all of a sudden it was like we were rushing through stuff, but then it was like, is it the hike? Is the hike for me or is it for the kids?
Exactly. Yep.
And it really stuck with me
I'm glad. Do you know what piece of it stuck with you or why it stuck with you?
because the intentions. It was I have an intention and I had an outcome that I wanted. I didn't actually sit with the I didn't sit with the emotions or sit with the present, and I was trying to create the outcome I wanted instead of actually allowing it to be organic.
Good. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the point of the story with Nico, my boy. I had such a good intention. I was going to turn him on to hiking because I love hiking. And like I told you on the phone, we get about 20 feet onto the path and he's, Papa, look at this. A bunch of gnarled up roots. Yeah, that's really cool, baby. Yeah, it's a tree and a, okay, let's go. 10 feet later, Papa, look at this. And there's a bunch of ants on the ground. And I could feel as this continued, every 10 feet or so, I started to feel a little irritated. Like, hey, I'm trying to take you on this hike. I've got it all planned out. There's water down below. And then, kind of like you, I had to ask a question. And what I realized was I wasn't listening. I was so attached to my good intention that I was missing my boy. My good intention was to turn him on to hiking. He's having a blast. His innocence and curiosity is all on display about how incredible what's going on the ground is. And then I woke up and I thought, I'm an idiot. I mean, he's already in the good hike. He's loving it. So we got maybe, I don't know, 75 yards until I had to turn around and come back because we ran out of time because so much time was on the ground looking at critters and stuff.
And sometimes that's the best thing to ever happen. It's just like, wow, watching a little sprout be able to just really love the moment.
That's right. That's right. Especially because what he was demonstrating was his innocence and curiosity and his excitement because of it. He just discovered these ants. Wow, crazy. And I could have stepped on it. Because I'm the bigger guy, I'm the papa. I could have said, "Look, stop stopping. Let's go. We got a hike to do." And he would have obeyed me. And I wouldn't have realized that I just stepped on his innocence. And he's going to pull back a little bit now. So thankfully, he kept on looking at these incredible creatures and stuff on the ground and woke me up to, right, listen to my boy. He's telling me he's having the time of his life right now.
Oh, that's such a precious thing. You I know you just shared with me before that you grew up in New York and you decided at 16 years old and said, "Well, I'm going to go to California and I'm just going to go." Like, do you think that that was you when you were a little kid, just had that spontaneous curiosity?
Yes, I think that's true for all us kids. I think we're born with an innate curiosity about this wonderful, crazy world, and it progressively gets stepped on. So, can I tell you another story?
I would love to.
Um, how should I start this one? It's not a story; it's a made up story. But this is how I try to articulate how we parents screw up our kids. And the metaphor I use is like there's a 1 year old kid in a sandbox outside, and you plop them down, and they start to get amazed about the sand, and the sand is running through their fingers, and they're enthralled with it. And then they see a truck, a toy truck, and they go and they reach the truck, and they're spinning it around, and then they look up, and there's a bird, and they're just moment to moment, they're following their curiosity, and it's innocent. They don't have an agenda. They're just going. And then a shiny beetle starts to crawl across the sand, and they're enthralled with that. And they go to reach for it, and the
Hmm.
parent who's sitting on the bench goes, "Don't touch that!" In the hopes, good intention, protect the kid from a bug or whatever. And the kid jumps back. I mean, you could probably feel it in your own body right now, like, "Oh, don't touch that." And that kid learns, okay, beetles are bad. They also learn, watch out with that curiosity and that innocence of yours. Step back and don't trust it because you get yelled at. Repeat
So,
that 1,000 times, and the kid learns, shut that down.
hmm.
And I could have done that to Nico on our hike.
Somebody actually just said it's hard when we get caught up in the timetables and practicalities to stop and observe long enough to see what our children want and need in a moment, especially when it feels like they're attacking.
That's brilliant. Who said that?
It was one of my friends, Chelsea. She's another Marine as well. And Candace, she wrote, she said, exploring and just happy to spend time with you. Talking about the kids. And that was something before.
Yeah, good.
And it's, when I think about this, it's like, so I did, and I told you on the phone, I did a hospitalization stay for 13 weeks doing cognitive processing therapy. And when I was going through the whole rainforest, and this is when I was homeless, I remember touching the moss on the trees and put my feet in, like I took my shoes off and I did some barefoot hiking in Mount Rainier. And all these things that we were told, well, don't do this, don't do that. And then all of a sudden it just brought me back to being, instead of why do I have these limitations? Why do I want this type of outcome? And why do I want to throttle everything down?
Good question. Did you get an answer?
I did. It's just that people were trying to protect. So they made suggestions that in our minds that we decided to make laws. And then when the laws were there for the safeguards, because these are like stories that we tell down historically to ourselves to be able to keep ourselves safe. But then it also steals the possibility of joy in other unsure outcomes.
Right. Right. Into the unknown.
And this is one of the reasons I started up this podcast, is because being strong guys, we have typically have not been able to have fathers role model a lot of times, or the emotions and the spectrum. And what does life look like if we decide to allow ourselves to heal, allow ourselves to feel, and allow ourselves to be able to grow?
So, may I ask you a question?
Of course.
Given that, what's the hardest part for a boy man? What's the hardest part to drop into vulnerability, feelings, and such?
At first, I didn't know how to. It wasn't role modeled. And then when I realized that when I closed that door, I was worried about Pandora's box opening up and not being able to shut the door. It was more the anxiety of actually failing and being wrong, and how we live in a very perfection type of society. What is your take on it?
Yeah, like that. I would disagree on one thing, that I'm going to speculate that when you were a young kid, a baby, you had no problems with expressing emotion. You were
Hmm.
hungry, food wasn't given, breast wasn't given, you start crying.
Hmm.
You're tired, you want to go to sleep, you start crying. They make you giggle because they're doing something funny and you giggle. There's a freedom, like my analogy of the kid in the sandbox. There's just a freedom.
Hmm.
And everyone's different and every parent is different, but we're progressively taught, especially men, don't go there.
Hmm.
That's not acceptable. And we learn. We're incredible learners, us human beings. And even to the point we learn enough to shut us down.
What, in your profession or your perspective, how do we create that curiosity of opening up that type of internal dialogue?
Well, that's a question for the ages. That's like a dissertation length answer. Uh, um, What I say, a lot of clients who drop in, I tell them how courageous they are, because they're going against their whole defensive pattern, their whole protection strategy, especially men. Guys, 3 days ago, I saw a guy for the second time and he said he never cries. And we started to dive into it. And by the end of our meeting, he was crying. And he was like, what the hell just happened? And I said, what happened was I kept inviting you in, and you were courageous enough to take the invitation and go a place you've been taught, don't ever go. It's not going to work out well.
Hmm.
And I learned that, I was born in New York, like you said, had a lot of fights and you had to be tough. And then I moved out to California to start my master's program. And the master's program was run by Will Schutz, who pioneered encounter groups. So we would have 3 days a week, we'd have these hour and a half long encounter groups, and men would be crying. And I swear, I was, as a 26-year-old, I'm thinking, what the hell are these guys doing? I mean, this is cray-cray. And I could feel there's something in me saying, men who cry, it's not right. And yet there was something attractive about it too. Like, something's going on here I don't understand. And then lo and behold, with the woman I was with at the time, her aunt and uncle are with us, and we're watching a movie, The Black Stallion, in the theaters. And something really emotional happens on the screen. I don't even remember the scene. And I feel tears coming up. And I could feel this kind of organic, something wants to cry. And my mind going, you are not doing this. Shut that down. And because it became so clear that something was organically coming up and I'm muscling it down, I suddenly got turned around of what's going on? Where did I learn not to cry? It wasn't manly. And why am I shutting it down now? And it was because I'd be embarrassed with the aunt and uncle. They'd say, oh, Randall's the guy that cries at movies. They'd have some judgment about me. And from that point on, I started to really look at what are my vulnerabilities? Where are my tears? What do I do when I'm sad and hurt? I typically got angry. It seemed like the way to handle it. Fuck all y'all. And to come home to, actually, there's a whole quadrant in me that I have shut down. It was really eye-opening.
It's almost like it becomes necrotic in a lot of ways.
It's a really good word. Yes. It feels like dead space.
What was interesting while you were talking about that, not crying. So I did a psilocybin retreat in May of last year, and I was still working for the VA, and I ended up telling my what I call my supervisor, I just did this. And she's like, well, I love this for you. You're willing to try new things and heal. So I was working as a peer specialist, and she's a clinical psychologist, really, really bright woman. And Jared Napier, the guy that was running it, he worked with the Marines as a corpsman as well, and then he was a standalone corpsman working with the SEALs. And we had a few guys that was part of like special forces over there, and I seen these grown, strong men crying. And something that Jared said that stuck with me. He was talking about the way that our faces are shaped. So when tears actually come down, they're actually meant to be tasted and not wiped away. It's also meant to soothe the touch of the skin. And I was thinking about this, and I'm like, these are some tough, tough dudes. I'm like, I know I've been through some shit, but these guys been through some other shit. And it's like, it was one of the most humanizing, heavily masculine things I have ever seen in my life. And from that day on, I thought about like how much of a pleasure it is when a dude cries with me. When a guy is willing to show me that vulnerability and know that I am not going to shame them and I'm going to embrace them with love and compassion.
Yes. I think the way we men have been trained is if you cry, you're a sissy, you're weak, right? And what is ripped off from us is, as we grow, if we learn about emotions and what's tender inside, how we got hurt as kids, whatever, it doesn't take away how tough we are. It just adds to the body of work we are. Now we have access to, I see someone who's been really hurt. I feel emotional for them. It doesn't mean if they don't turn and attack me, I'm not going to attack back.
Mhm.
It expands us. It doesn't pigeonhole us into, oh, now we're weak. But we're taught that and we believe it growing up.
And then when we actually challenge that, life starts to begin again. And it gets fun, it gets funky, but it's like really cool. You get into that dead space and you have a chance to go explore and be able to live life a little bit.
Am I allowed to ask, can you say more about that? Like, what was your process of like seeing these big guys cry? How did you get to your vulnerability, your tears?
So when I worked with Dr. David Gately back in New York, when I did the 13 weeks, I realized that I looked at the world in black and white for a while. And then when I started looking at the shades of gray, and then when I started looking at emotions and understanding how to identify emotions, it started to open the world into color.
Oh,
Like, and when I was watching him phrase it in a different way than I understood it, it just clarified it. It added a new dimension on the prism of understanding emotions and tears.
beautiful. And I love that you add, now the world has color.
Yes.
In the book, the first chapters I called filters, which is things we accumulate to protect ourselves. And the metaphor I use is, mom yells at us when we're little, and that hurts. So we step back, and that's one pair of glasses, one pair of sunglasses. So already things are starting to get filtered in.
Hmm.
That's going to happen 2-3 billion times as we grow up. And each time we add another set of sunglasses. So then when we're adults, we're seeing all through these filters and we can't see anymore. We think we are, but we can't. And so when you say, I forget exactly how you put it, suddenly the world has color and depth. I think exactly. You've taken off all those sunglasses and now you can see how incredible the world is in some ways.
What's interesting is that I also look at it the inverse way is that when we wear these sunglasses, using the metaphor you're saying, I kind of look at it as that we're putting clay or something to mask who we are.
No
And
doubt.
what and when we do that, we're allowing people to only see us through small parts or holes. And all these other parts are the rejection, our self-rejection
Yes.
that we are transferring it onto other people because we're worried about them actually being this place is being too ugly for them.
Right.
Or but when we start to love it, we also the imperfection allows them to be able to love us.
And we can then receive it.
Yes.
Those filters, those sunglasses, they don't let love in.
They let it through like a peephole. And that warmth that we get, it's not enough to be able to keep our body and our soul warm.
That's why in the work I do, how do I help people see the beauty of that pinhole that light went in, and how come it's just a pinhole? How do we open it up so that you're walking through the world as if you're walking through the woods? This is it, you're walking through life like my boy Nico was on that trail. This is incredible. What's coming next? It just opens us up.
So curiosity, I know a lot of times people they go into psychology or they go into theology. What brought you into both those worlds and how do you feel like they blend into the person's internal soul?
Well, that's another big question. I got really interested in high school. I had a teacher. My first class of psychology was in high school, and maybe 3 times a week I would stay after classes, after school, and we would talk. We'd have these debates about psychology and spirituality. I was already meditating, um, and my rap was, why do you separate them out? Why are they such different disciplines? I mean, why aren't they together? And when I went to undergraduate, I felt it more and more and more that psychology has made a terrible mistake. Psychology came out of allopathy. Freud was a neurologist. He had to get doctors to agree with him, so he created a system that was medically sound, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it missed a whole other quadrant of therapy or counseling. Is there's, like you said, there's a soul here, there's a spiritual component. So instead of there being spirituality over here and psychology over here, I felt a passion of bringing them together. So when I got my PhD in clinical psychology, I also wanted to be a minister. So I became ordained in a non-denominational church. And I wanted people that wanted to work with me to know I'm not just going to diagnose you and treat a diagnosis. That's not of interest to me. I want to help us drop down into a truer sense of self, like you're talking about. Open up, feel emotions, to see what I couldn't see before because of that pinhole. And to me, opening up more and more and more, you can't help but to feel gratitude. And as Brother David Steindl-Ros wrote, gratefulness is the heart of prayer. That if you can walk through life and periodically feel grateful for whatever, that I saw that raccoon run on the branch, that there's a beautiful sunset, that my lady loves me, that I make the best bolognese sauce on the planet, whatever it is. If you could really feel gratitude, you're home. I mean, this is.
I love that. I really do. It's the gratitude is like if you do a gratitude journal, which you probably have actually instructed people, it shapes the way that you view the world.
That's right. Take off those old glasses and put on these glasses. See through gratitude. Absolutely. Good for you.
Well, so when I think about the mental health field, and I feel like a lot of times they look at it through only how our brain is working. We sometimes miss how, like I was talking to a guy yesterday, and he was talking about how he has COPD stage 4. And having that dialogue with other people to say, hey, I feel like I'm drowning, like my body is failing. And he's feeling these other symptoms because of his body. It's not just in his head, it's in his body.
Right.
And then another area that they tried to treat it with the head was a moral injury. And I feel like that is a spiritual hit where it actually, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, like, I feel like that's a spiritual hit. And then when we actually are talking about like how our morals were hurt or we did something or something happened in front of us, it's more than just a mental impact.
I can't agree more. Yes, absolutely. And how do we bring them together? How do we not separate that which is us? I'm a psychological and spiritual being. I don't separate them out inside of me. I can watch how psychology can get in the way of me dropping into gratitude or whatever it is. But if I separate them out, I'm ripping myself apart. And I won't come home.
Like you said, when you were up on that rock looking over into the ocean, you felt at home.
Yes. The body speaks its mind. And that's what I feel like you were saying earlier, that the body knows. If our heads may be a little bit behind, but if we're listening, really listening to ourselves, the body will keep on telling us, this doesn't feel like home, that does feel like home. I shouldn't be with this person, I should be with this person. But we're so locked up behind those sunglasses, we can be stuck for decades. And that's dreadfully sad.
And what's even worse is that when we are giving up that crutch that has filtered the world, and then we realize then the resentment while we leaned on that crutch.
Right.
And then how that stifles the ability for the progression to live. Because, go ahead.
See, that's brilliant. How do we stay in touch with, my rap is to listen to what you just said? Because it's talking to us in a whisper all the time if it doesn't feel fully alive. How do we come home and listen to it? Now, you've been to war. That hurts us all the more to step back. What's going on? This could be really dangerous, and talk about trauma. So again, an act of courage to go, you're right, I've been slammed, really hurt all these different ways. And how does to go back, curiosity, innocence come up so I can really be fully in life, not back here as a distant participant.
I I kind of actually use the verbiage of surviving life, where you're not living it and you're existing as a like almost like a background character in your own reality.
That's really well said. I'm going to rip that off from you.
Yes.
Clients are going to be hearing that now. You're in survival life, not real life.
Because one of the things I've learned, and honestly, again, I was like I said, I was blessed and I had a really good guide on this, is that when I have my survival instincts kick back in still, where if I see something hanging from the wires or I see a pothole, and if my I call it the monster, other people call it beast, they call it different things. I started to become friends with it instead of push it away or try to lock it in a cage like Frankenstein. And what I actually say is, I say, "Thank you, Will. Thank you for getting my back." I had a conversation with another guy about this yesterday, and he said they're like just all little kids that are melded together, and they're all cooing for something.
What? What are they cooing for?
Well, safety for certain aspects, protection. They're looking for life, and it's just so we create this thing that's deformed based off of things that we don't know how to discuss.
Right. So what I hear is we want safety and protection, like you say, so that we feel safe enough to live our life the way we're called to live it. And if we don't, we shut ourselves down, like you said, in that necrotic landscape. Oftentimes, not even knowing we're doing it.
Yeah, that's true. Like I actually, a person Zach just wrote. He said, "I'm definitely surviving life, not living it." And I'm super glad that he's actually even watching this because with this type of conversation, I feel like it's maybe gives a person the permission to be able to start taking those glasses off, what you were using, or to be courageous to be able to walk outside their house. Because when we are definitely in fear, which I'm sure you're well aware of this, like when we are in a survival mode so much, being able to walk outside our house can be a huge act of courage.
That's right. If we're always scanning, where's the next hit coming from?
Hmm.
Every step is courageous. But like you were saying, how do I look at that always scanning for what it is? Do I really need to use it? Am I really in danger right now? Or is this the past coming to haunt me in terms of I have this organizing principle that I have to scan the environment all the time because
Hmm.
dad did such and so? And do I really need it? Or can I take a moment, let the protection go, and look up at the sky? See the red-tailed hawk flying overhead.
I remember the first time I got in awe of something, and then all of a sudden I just like jumped right back into survival mode because I was like, whew, I felt so unsafe. And one of the things I've done as a peer, and this is why I'm getting my social work degree, because I want to help people in different ways, is doing the somatic area, the touch, doing barefoot grounding, and walking through those wet grass, maybe even stepping on a big thing of poop. It sucks. But at the end of the day, you're so present when that actually happens. The
Right.
next few times that you're walking, you're going to be looking, you're going to be actively scanning.
Yep.
But so going into obviously you got your PhD in psychology. Like, what drew you to that field? Why did you decide you want to become a psychologist? And what was the way that you knew you were being successful?
Okay. Well, let me answer the first one first and then remind me of the second question. Because the first one I'm really clear on, which is I grew up in a New York Italian family. Primarily, my dad was Italian and the whole New York clan was Italian. And we'd have dinners at Nan's house in Suffolk County every Sunday. Big, the Goombas and everybody's around the table. Nobody's listening to each other. Everyone's talking at once and interrupting each other. And even as a kid, I could feel they're desperate to be heard and no one's listening. So instead of someone saying, I'm going to shut up and really ask Jen, so tell me more about that, they just interrupt and talk about their stories. And it perplexed me. I didn't understand why the hell weren't any of you listening when you're aching to be heard, and so is everybody else. And so as I grew and would think about that more, I realized, oh, I was alone. I felt dreadfully alone in those in the family, really, because I didn't know that anybody could listen. And so I started to develop a passion for what is listening and why do we miss it so much? Why are we so off balance with speaking my truth and not around, let me listen to yours. I could learn something. Um, and that's when I started listening to people, in high school. Friends would come over to my bedroom and they would talk to me about their issues. And I wasn't there to help them, but I was intrigued, like, wait, so that guy said that thing and you went, where? What happened? Because I realized every time I could drop it and really feel what it was like for them, I expanded a little bit. Some of those glasses came off and my perspective broadened. So I became passionate about it. There was a debate club, but there was no listening club. And recently I just learned that Finland now is teaching elementary school kids a class in empathy. And I thought, awesome. So I realized in part I wanted to become a therapist counselor of some kind at a young age because I was fascinated by how people organize their lives. And almost always it was largely, if not always, predicated on the hurts they sustained throughout their childhood. And I was fascinated by it. So now I'm an old man. I've been in practice over 40 years and I'm still in the same place. I sit down with a client. I'm like, wow, tell me about that. I mean, today I've heard innumerable stories of women who were sexually assaulted as kids and as young adults. And a relatively new client dropped into how she was assaulted by her stepfather. I teared up twice. Tears just came. She started to cry, and I started to cry with her. And I said, "You're making me cry." So we were in it together. She wasn't talking to a male therapist who's going to make it better. She was with a brother who was feeling, oh my God, what it was like for you as an 8-year-old to go through that horror show. And thank God I learned early on, let the tears come. There's magic in them. You don't need to hold them back. And at the end, she said, I've never talked about this stuff before because I can tell the person I'm talking to, they take a little step back. It was too horrible for them to be present. And I thought, right, exactly.
And or it's too much for them, or it's going to be my trauma is going to be their trauma,
Right.
and honestly, just I think listening is one of the most beautiful arts that we can ever do.
Thank you. Yes.
It's when we empathetically witness somebody else's struggles.
So let me be picky. Yes, except I would change not witness because witness means I'm out.
Okay.
The metaphor I use is I want to be penetrated by them. I want them to go right through my sternum, into my heart, into my belly. So, as close as I can approximate, I'm feeling what they're feeling. And I'll keep on asking questions until I have that sense, not only mentally, but somatically, not only somatically, but spiritually. And then I'll say, so wait, I'm getting this feeling. Is it like this? I'll ask a question and let them course correct me a little bit until I'm really dropped into, oh, that's what it's like for you. And then again, the separation between you and I, it ebbs. And we're just brother and sister on the planet doing the best we can, but we're not alone anymore.
It's like one of the things that I've actually heard is it's not always the trauma that happens to us. It's how does somebody else react to it when we share it, and how you're helping them give breath to that 8-year-old girl. What you just said,
Right.
even though she's a woman now,
Right.
but the 8-year-old girl, it's still been cooing for so long to actually be understood.
Yes. And that's the the dreadful, painful state of us humans. Is exactly what you just said. There, to use that word, cooing. We will try indefinitely by giving 2% of whatever the thing is, and then we'll see how the other person's reacting or not, and then we'll either keep on going or not. And that aloneness, philosophy since Plato has been about aloneness and what we do. So we create religions in the hopes of, I won't feel so alone because God or Allah or whatever is with me. And I feel like that there's a reason for that, because we, through our childhoods and our innocence and curiosity being stepped on, we end up feeling really alone in this world. And that's dreadful and unnecessary.
It's when you said Allah, God, I think about Mana, Gaia, all the different names of this like something that is all everything.
Right.
And we try to humanize it with like a man to be able to make it more palatable for us to understand.
Right.
But when I think about the opportunity of having something that I do believe in God, and I've been working on having a better relationship with Him, to be honest with you. And it's some of the things that I've been reading the Bible, or getting back into reading the Bible. But I remember reading the Dharma. I read the Bhagavad Gita, um, actually, and I'm just trying to understand more of God, because quite a bit of us being understood really comes from the soul, I feel like. And you can hear what I'm saying, what words I'm saying, but you also be picking up on the tone, the rate of speech, the voice inflection. You'll be picking up on my body language. What is the 90% nonverbal I'm using that is really resonating? And I believe that's more of the morality, that spiritual, that really human connection.
Are you wanting me to try to answer that question?
Well, if you want to, you're more welcome to. I
Well,
would love to hear your perspective.
If it's okay with you, let maybe do that next. My curiosity is, so as best as you can tell with your dropping back into Christianity, into the Bible, into God, what are the main things that get in your way of opening up to God?
So and I've actually broke this down, was the perversion and distortion of what people in power that was supposed to represent Christianity, that created such a black eye and did more damage by like I said, perverting what the Bible is for.
So again, humans torquing it, twisting it for their own sake, their own I don't know, manipulation, so they feel good about themselves. I don't even know, but you're right, how they soil it. I know that I've also studied scripture quite a bit, and when I was in my PhD program, there was one class on spirituality. There were a number, but one of them was called the Desert Fathers, and I learned that there were sections of the Bible that the Second Council of Nicene had canceled out because it didn't agree with their particular masculine perspective, and they discovered these, buried under some sand someplace. What were they called? The Nag Hammadi Library. And I got them and started reading them, and it was like an integration of what we think of as Christianity and Buddhism. I thought, wait a minute, these guys who followed Christ at the time of his life and just after his death were writing what Christ taught them, and it had this Buddhist flair to it, and they had knew nothing about Buddhism. And I thought, and that's what people wanted to push away. So they literally buried it and said, it's not canonical. It's not part of the scripture. I thought, guys, you're blowing it. Again, if you allow in these other scriptures, you're not hurting what's already there. You're expanding it. Listen.
And I think honestly, the expansion and allowing people to think
Yeah,
sometimes
thank you.
stifles the ability of control.
Yes, that's right.
So one of the things I wanted to do is ask you a few questions about your book, if you don't mind.
Of course not.
What was what was your favorite chapter that you wrote?
See, now that's a great question. I knew my favorite chapter even before I wrote it, and it's two chapters: curiosity and innocence. It's how I end the book, um, and it's because I feel like that's what gets ripped off as we age, men and women. um, and I knew that to really be able to listen so that their material gets into me, even underneath their narrative, but I can feel it. I've got to be like that kid in the sandbox before I'm yelled at about the beetle. I'm just enthralled with my curiosity's on fire. I genuinely really want to get to know what it's like for you over there and how it's different from me over here. And so the whole first part of the book is what gets in our way of listening, and then what do we have to drop into to really really listen, not so that it's a technique, but it's an honest way of relating to other. And to me it was where'd my curiosity go? When I'm hiking, am I talking on my phone all the time? Or am I noticing the buds just starting to come out on that tree and the squirrel is just running around? How much am I just limiting my perspective because I've been taught to put my curiosity, innocence away? So I loved thinking about that. I loved writing it. And frankly, as you can tell, I'm pretty into talking about it.
Well, now I got the horror question for you.
Oh, great.
I just totally ruined it. But
We
what
were doing
was
so
what
well.
was what was the hardest thing for you to be able to convey so that your readers can understand the complexity of emotions that you were trying to write?
Another great question. When I first wrote the book, the first sentence was, "Let's face it, we're dreadful at listening." I wanted to punch people in the face and say, "You suck at this. You don't listen. Your mind associates a thought, and you jump in with your material instead of asking questions." And so then in that chapter was, after the intro, it's on filters. The hardest part was, how do I convey to people who think they listen well, like therapists, that actually you've got so many sunglasses on, you're not seeing. Like you're going to see this in your um, social work classes. I think you really see it because I see how expansive you are. That you don't want to go for the cheap truths. You want to really get to the capital T truths. That they're going to compress empathy into active listening, or reflecting or validating, all these techniques that are good to learn, but they're techniques and they get in the way of really being with another person. So I really wanted to convey to folks, let's first sit back and go, yeah, I don't listen very well. I haven't been trained. And so I don't. Nobody does. That was the hardest thing to write because I thought it's going to be the hardest thing for people to really embrace.
Because you're calling people out on reflecting on what they perceive to know,
Yes.
and then challenging a person on what they perceive to know. Like Adam Grant wrote this really amazing book. It's called Think Again. And when you have the ability to really challenge what you believe you know, then that's when you can start to allow new information to disprove what you perceive that you do know already. And so I'm actually really interested in looking into and reading this book. And it's going to be quite delightful for me, especially when I have a little bit more free time and I'm not looking at NIH papers and everything else. But when you said active listening and reflective listening, these are techniques. And motivational interview, it is a great technique. But you're correct when you say, or at least I feel like you're very correct when you say, are you actually being heard? Are you actually being seen? So I was talking to my buddy Justin yesterday, and so I did something for Community 7 television, and I started to put this also doing live stuff inside the station. And I said, Justin, when somebody asks you about suicide, they said, check yes or no. And like when you're doing this stuff, do they ever ask you, say, what do you want to gain by completing suicide? And it's, go ahead.
Do you see what you just did? You didn't do a technique. You asked. You asked a great question that's going to make them go, oh, wait a minute. You're asking them to look deeper into themselves.
And you know what the answer was? I want the tape to stop. And how many people wish they had the ability to say, I don't want to bring this subject up because even in therapy, we shut it down.
Yes. That's one of the sad parts for me about psychotherapy is I'll consult with other therapists, or rather they'll consult with me, and they'll say something like, I could tell they needed some empathy or validation, so I did that. And I'll ask kind of a question like you just asked, which is, why? What happened inside of you that you thought now I should actively listen or give empathy? And 9 times out of 10, it wasn't because I was really curious and I wanted to hear more from them. It was I wanted to make them better, contain them, put them in a little box. And then the challenge I offer them is, do you see how you're not only ripping off your client, you're ripping yourself off? Because you just took a step back. And I'll bet you 1,000 cappuccinos, they feel it. And they may not just move back 2 millimeters, but you've lost them.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll try a few more times to open up the conversation so that you can really be with them. And now you have a choice. Do you take that courageous route and drop in and ask questions like you just did, Will? Or do you want to take the easy route and be a psychotherapist who sits back and assesses and diagnoses and treats the diagnosis?
So my analogy of what I use, especially when I was talking with veterans, we take a rucksack that's full of nasty, sweaty, sandy stuff that we have been carrying around with us. And it's just been compacted down and down and down. The type of therapist I want to be, I want to be able to help you lay it all out. I want you to be able to look at it, what is actually helping you, what's not helping you. If the sand is helping you, if that shirt is still helping you, allowing you to choose, but exploring what would that shirt look like to you if you cleaned it? What would be if you decided that you don't want that shirt again?
Right.
Instead of this is how you wash your clothes, this is how you repack your pack and move on. I want to, my goal eventually when I become a therapist is for every client to fire me. That's my goal.
I like the analogy of the rucksack because to make any of those decisions, we have to get it out from behind us, which is what we do with our material, and open it up and take a look. Dive into all that thing, all those things we think are mucky, icky. Pull them out, see what's up. What happens to me when I pull out those old rotten socks? And we're programmed to not do that. Why would you do that? That's stupid. Go smoke some dope, have a shot of tequila. Let's get out of here. And what people don't get, I'll give you the metaphor. One of my teachers told me in my master's program, she said, she put it this way. She said, the kind of therapist you want to be is like 2 kids. They open up barn doors and it's piled 6 feet high in a horse poo. And one kid goes, "Ugh, I'm out of here." That's one way to be a therapist. Like, oh, that icky stuff. I just want to get rid of it. The other kid starts digging through the crap. And the first kid goes, "What are you doing?" He goes, "With all this horse shit, there's got to be a pony in here someplace." And I thought, okay, it's a little weird analogy, but I like it. It's against all odds. One of us might see, wait, there's something in here. Let's dive in. Even though our whole system's going, no, I don't want to shovel through horse poo, or I don't want to look in the backpack. That's the act of courage to me, because you may look foolish. You may get nowhere.
You know, when I look at that analogy and my mind goes somewhere totally different, you clean out that poo, you have a whole barn.
Right.
You have it. You have so much potential. You have the ability that you're not being abandoned. You actually can be loved. You can put in new stuff. You can organize what you want.
Right.
And I could talk to you for a while. You have a very easy voice. You probably have heard that a lot. But the question I have now is about the book. What did you want the person to take away?
Can it be New York?
It can be New York.
Shut up and listen. Like you were saying earlier, take the courageous step and own. Yeah, I could learn something about really listening. What's in my way? How do I take off those sunglasses? What are the perks I get when I really listen to someone and really feel them? What really happens to me? So it becomes a spiritual path. It's not just I'm of service to other. This also serves me. I expand every time I talk with someone. I wanted to change the philosophy of listening. Again, especially in America, we're so off balance in find your truth and speak your truth, which is good stuff. But we're so off balance in now listen with real curiosity until you get to the speaker's innocence and you could really feel them.
So, would you say the inverse is to speak also your truth so that the person can hear you?
Yes. I I, I cannot play a role as a therapist. The best you're going to get is Randall. And I mean, I'll tell you a story. When I was first starting out, I mean, I don't know, 30 years old or something. And a woman came in with her psychiatrist because she wanted to start therapy. And she'd been to many therapists before and it never worked. And the psychiatrist saying, you have to do therapy. And she started telling me stories of horror of her childhood that Stephen King would have vomited and run away. It was the most horrific stuff. I didn't even know this stuff happened in real life. It was really horrible. And I thought, I'm not appropriate for this. I'm a kid. I've never been trained about this kind of horror and abuse. I'm no good at this. And then a thought hit me. Yeah, but I know how to listen. So stop thinking you have to do anything except listen. So she would tell me a story, and I would find myself not doing this, but I'd be like, well, wait, so you were 4 years old. What was it like? And she told me weeks later, she said, I've never told anybody these stories, especially in the detail. And I said, well, why do you tell me? She goes, you're really interested. And I could always tell when I would start telling a story, I'm reading them from head to toe. And I could feel them sitting back a little bit, like it was a little too much. I never feel that from you. I feel like you want me to talk more so you can get what it is like for me and what it was like for me. And I thought, oh, that's really well said. I think that's true. That's what I want. And so she helped me. You don't have to be my therapist. Be someone who really wants to know what it was like for me. That's what I that's how I bust out of this isolation I had to jump into as a kid to protect myself. So even then, there I am, just starting my practice. And this woman taught me. She's kind of a hero to me that in fact, in the book, I called her a hero um, because she taught me she's reading me like a book. And if I take one step back, she's taking a step back too. And that's not what I want. I don't want that in my practice. I don't want that with my lady. I don't want that with my boys, my kids. I want to really be with them as long as I get to walk this planet.
Randall, you are such a good dude. And honestly, you're a great storyteller. When you actually are sharing this, you can actually feel the passion behind it.
Yeah, yeah.
When you're complimenting the client, how many people I have seen that are experts in the field that don't realize that they learn as equally from the clients.
Yes. Yes, it to me it's tragic. And that's why people my age, they all want to retire. They're not all, some want to retire because they're exhausted. And I think, really? I can't imagine retiring. I'm in the heart of humanity when I'm listening to people. Why would I want to step out of this?
It sometimes it's the burnout because they don't feel like they really truly belonged.
Exactly.
And I hope when I get to your age, I have this type of curiosity where I can continue to keep learning and keep growing. And I've actually really found this conversation to be a huge pleasure.
Well, thank you.
So go
I have
ahead.
I have a prediction.
What's that?
From our phone call and from how you're doing it today, the trauma you've gone through, all our war and such, and how you have such integrity about what's right for Will and what's not right for Will, that you're really parsing out what's my path. I think curiosity is going to be your best friend in your career. I don't think you're going to take the cheap route. I think you come at this with a lot of courage and intention.
So I was on a hike right before I got onto this interview. Reputation. If you sell your reputation for money, you can never buy your reputation back. If you shortchange your curiosity, you cannot get that curiosity back.
Right.
It's I'd rather actually sit with the person because if you're going to give me your time, I want to be able to show you that love back because time is the one resource that we can't have back.
Yeah. Right.
I do want to actually ask you one final question. What is
Okay.
a message that you would like for anybody that does listen to this podcast that you would like to share?
Take one moment with your parents, with your partner, with your kids, with your best friend, and shut up and listen. Set an intention of, I'm just going to keep on following my curiosity, asking questions until I really get, oh, it's like that for you? Just one time, and you'll feel the reward, the benefit, the connection. It'll turn your life around.
Well, today it's been an absolute pleasure to be able to speak to Dr. Randall Alfando, the author of Listening in the Raw. As you could tell, he's just a very genuine man.
Mhm.
He says that he does cook the best bolognese sauce. I'm going to put an asterisk next to that because Italian food
Oh, it's
is,
on now, Will. It's on.
and I wanted to say thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to sit with you and talk with you today.
Likewise, this was a great one. I really appreciate the contact.